Right?
I got
Yeah, I didn't want to.
yeah, I
get it. This.
not enough.
Okay, today we're going to start on test Vav on the base 15b. It's about 11 lines from the bottom. Bestin mahalchen shtei tedes achrem chulu. It's the second wide line.
Yeah, nice.
Okay, we thank Hashem. We're able to learn Torah every day. So we're learning Hashem the base of Mikdash.
Amen.
And for Shlema, for my father, and for Naftali ben Menucha and Bela. What's that?
That's Naftali do it.
He was said it's too weak to wake up early for it. And it's also it's hard for me even to watch it later. Okay. So it goes like this. Bezdin Halfer State says, so we're discussing over here annexing, making a new area of the Zara. And then the ramifications of that is that if someone enters into that new area, when he's Tameh, he's gonna have to bring the Karban Oila V'Yered, like we spoke about. If he forgot, and if he didn't forget, all that stuff. Well, the way that this was done was that you needed the king, and you needed the Navi, and you needed the Urim V'Tumim, and they would walk around, and the Besdin was there, and then the two Taidas also, they brought two carbon Taidas. They said that they were carrying the loaves of bread. That's what we learned before. So it says the Besdin would walk, and the two Taidas would go after them. It's being carried by the Kainim. L'meimra is this to say the Besdin Kami Taida Azli, that the Besdin walks in front of the carbon Taida. But we have the pasuk in Nehemiah. It says Vayelech Achrem Hoshaya, the Chatzi Sare Yehuda, and that pasuk was referring to when they were doing the construction of the second temple. So first the carbon taida went, and then these Hoshaya and Chatzi Sare Yehuda went, which means that the taida went before the best. Here you're saying best in Mahalchin, that the taida went behind them. So, and from the source where we know this from, it says the opposite. It says Hachi Kamer. Best in Mahalchin, taidis Mahalchin. So best in Achreim. I don't know how that works. If you read it again, best in Mahalchin, taidis Achreim. You would do two commas. And then it ends up with the Besdin was walking behind the right. The Besdin was walking, and the Titus after them. It means the Besdin was walking after them. Okay. Let's eat kids, right? Okay, Kate and Mahalchas, how would they go? Reb Chia, Reb Shimon, Berebi. Reb Chia and Reb Shimon, Rebbe's son. These are one generation down from the end of the Tanoim. This is one generation into the Amorite period. Reb Chia is the one that edited the Brises, right? Chia and Rebbe, and then this is Reb Shimon Berebi. She's Rebbe's son. Chadamar one says Zukineged Zu. It's asking how did the Titus go? So it says one. The Titus were carried like parallel to each other. Other one says that one was behind the other one. The one was in the front. You see, you have to read or drop further in the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that the two Titus were going, and all of Israel was after them. The inner one was eaten, and the outer one was burnt. Inner Titus, and there's the inner and an outer. Inner one was eaten, the outer one was burnt. The Gemara explains what's going on over here. We have a machlekes how the Titus were going, but whatever the case is, if you say that there's one corresponding to the other one, that means that they're walking parallel. The inner one would be the one that's next to the wall. They just moved the wall out. They just moved the wall out. Now they have to encircle the new area. So they're walking around the wall. So the inner one would be the one closer to the wall. The outer one would be the outside. The inner one was eaten. So and the outer one was burnt. Now, 1 second. What's the inner one? Tanan was taught in the Mishnah. It's in the inner one was eaten, the outer one was burnt. If we say that one is behind the other one, skip something I didn't explain. I skipped the line. I skipped because if they're walking parallel, then the inner one is the one that's closer to the wall. Right. If there's one after the other one, so which one is the pnimis? They're in a line.
Oh, it's just a line.
So what do you mean pnimis? Pnimis is after Mekarba Lebezin, the one that's closer to the Bezdin, which was in the front.
In the first.
Right. Pnimis means the one that was in the front. So now we have the Mishnah. It says the inner one was eaten, the outer one was burnt. If we say that there was inner one and the outer one is because they're walking in a line. The inner one would be the one that's closer to the front. The outer one is the one that's behind. Why is the inner one eaten? From the Asya Kama, the Kitchala. I have a problem here. We switched it around. We said that the Bezdin is walking front, right? No, the Taidas are in the front. That's what we switched around. Okay, yeah, now it makes sense.
Well, that's
the Taidas, even though in the Mishnah it looked like the Taidas were behind the Bezdin, but it turns out that the Taidas really in front of the Bezdin.
Right.
So the inner one would be the one that's closer to the Bezdin. One that's in front is considered the outer one.
Right.
That's the case. So then which one went into the area first? The outer one. The one in front is considered the outer one. One that went into the area first that consecrated the new area would be the outer one. So the outer one we're not going to be able to eat because it went into a place that wasn't holy. The inner one, by the time the inner one got there, was already consecrated by the outer one. So therefore, that's why it explains very well why the inner one was eaten and the outer one was burnt, because the outer one, just to consecrate it, and needed to go, and the outer one was used to consecrate. So
it's like
the bait, yeah. So because the outer one came first, and consecrated. But if you say that they're side by side, they're both consecrated together. They're both entering into that area at the same time. Why is one eaten and one not eaten? When I ask, according to you, 1 second. You can't consecrate it with just one. You told me that you needed both. We had a whole list of things that you needed to do in order for this to be consecrated. And if you just send one of them in, it doesn't consecrate it with just one. Could one of them consecrate it? You needed all of them. And it's not consecrated with just one. You needed the second one as well. Even if you're going to say that you don't need every single item here, you just need one of the items. But nevertheless, these two are considered one. You're going to see on the next page that there's a discussion of all the items that you needed, all of the bunch of things you needed to add on to this to the Azara, the king and the Kayan Gadol and the Purim Tumim and the Taidas. And one opinion says you need all of those or else it doesn't work. Other opinion says that you only need one of them. Yeah, so one of them says that you need every single item. Other one says that it was really or the king, so you don't need all the items. So if that's the case, maybe you could be able to answer over here that you only need one of the carbon taitas to consecrate. He says no, because both taitas are one thing. When it says achas mikalelo, it means one of the items, but it doesn't not half an item, right? So the taida is either or. Either you can eat it or you can't eat it. But why one yes and one no? So Elam Rabbi Yochanan, rather Rabbi Yochanan says, we're on top of Tesayin. Al pinavi nechelas, al pinavi nesrefes. You're looking for reasons here of why one yes and one no. You're looking too hard. This is all based on the prophet. The prophet said that one you eat and one you don't. You're trying to figure out that one consecrated and one didn't consecrate, coming up with logic. That's not what's happening here. It's not a logical thing. It's what the prophet said. The prophets, Chag Yizchariah Malachi, that where they are said that one gets eaten and one doesn't. And there's no reason for that. No known reason.
And how do you know which one?
Oh, the pneumis with that we can tell. Either it's the one that's inner or the one that's closer to the Bezdin. Then it's the one that's closer to the wall. Yeah, that wasn't our problem. Which one is the inner, which one's outer? Our problem is why should this one and why should that one? We thought we had a logic for it. We said no, it's not a logical one.
Yeah.
Okay. If he didn't have all of these services performed, then it doesn't work. It doesn't become consecrated, that new area, the temple. Well, Itmar, we have a statement of Amiroim. It's a compound word. Is Amar. It has been stated. Ravuna Amar. Ravuna says, Kalelu Tanan. Says he needed to do all of these things in order to consecrate the temple. Rav Nachman Amar Bachas Mikalelu. Rav Nachman says one of them. Tanan. And when it gave a list, it didn't mean that you needed all of them. It meant you need one of them. Okay. Well, Ravuna says that you need all of them because he says you need all of them. He says that when the temple was consecrated originally by Shlomo and David, so it was forever. So when they say this is very interesting, because when Ezra in the second temple, they dedicate the second temple, how were they able to consecrate it? They didn't have the king, they didn't have the Kohen Gadol, they didn't have they had a Kohen Gadol, they didn't have the Urim B'Tumim, they didn't have the things that were required. Maybe the Navi, well, the Navi they had. They didn't have. There were items that were missing. The Urim B'Tumim was missing. So, how did they consecrate the temple? So Reb Huna says, don't worry about that. It was consecrated already originally. So what are they doing? He says, well, Ezra Zecher B'Almo David, he was just doing whatever he could to commemorate the way it was done originally. But it's not that this is actually causing the temple to be consecrated. It was already consecrated from beforehand. And when they rebuilt it, that it just pops back into position, the holiness. Rav Nachman says, Bachas Mikalel Tanan. No, he says that one of them is good enough. And therefore, Kosavar, Kedusha Rishana Kitch L'Shait, V'Likitch L'Slavi. When the temple was originally dedicated by Shlomo Melech and by David Melech, when that was originally dedicated, so that only lasted for the first temple. Second temple, they had to rededicate. And they didn't have everything. That means because you don't need everything. One item is enough. Ezra Kedushi Kaddish. Even though he didn't have the Urim B'Tumim, but it doesn't matter. You don't need everything. You just need one of the items. That's good enough. Eisvei Rav or Rav Nachman. Rav has a question. That's Rav Nachman. According to Rav Nachman says, it's not consecrated for the future. We have to rededicate it. It says, 1 second. According to Rav Nachman, it says that you need all of them. Anything that wasn't done with all of them is going to our Mishnah. Rav Nachman responds, that's an easy one to answer. You just say, with one of them, not with all of them. Kol elu could mean all, or it could also mean any. Okay. Well, any would mean any of any of all, right? Okay. Tashma, come and listen. Abba Shal can ask now a question on Rav Nachman, I think. Abba Shal Shnei B'tzam Haya Bar Mishka. There were two, this is a Tosefta that we're quoting, an earlier source. So it's going to be a question on Rav Nachman or Rav Huna. Rav Nachman and Rav Huna are Amirayim, they're later sages. We're going to quote an earlier source, which if it supports one of them, that means it's a question on the other, it's going to be a problem. Yeah, it's a marsh. You leave out the last kuf and it's marsh. You see that?
What you say, what?
Yeah, it's an area for grazing or something. These two marsh areas on the what's it called? Har Mishka? Har Hazesim.
Wetlands today.
Wetlands.
Marsh areas.
Tachtaina ve'alyaina. There's a lower one and there's a higher one. The lower one is going to be closer to the Temple Mount. The higher one is going to be up the second mountain, up the Har Hazesim mountain. The lower one was considered consecrated as part of Yerushalayim, and the higher one was not consecrated with all of these things. Rather, that higher area that was consecrated by those that came back in the second temple from the exile. They returned from Babylonia. They didn't have a king and they didn't have their own. Now, what's happening? We have these two areas. How did they treat it during the second temple? Well, Tachtaina, the lower area, that was actually holy. Ameyaretz, the people of the earth, people that were ignorant, just regular farmers. They would go there. If they had a sacrifice that they brought, carbon shlamim, they considered that part of Yerushalayim, and they would eat it there. But they wouldn't eat their Meiser Sheni there, because they understood that anyone that's careful with Meiser gets rich. You got to do that right. So they would only eat their Meiser Sheni in the most appropriate place, which was in the Yerushalayim proper. And even though this was considered Yerushalayim, and it was perfectly fine to eat it there because it was consecrated, but you don't take chances with the segulas. You got to do this one right. So that's what they did. Meiser Sheni, they had to do it right. However, the Talmid Chachamim, those that knew, they would eat their kachim kalam and the Meiser Sheni and the second tithe. They would eat it there because that was Yerushalayim. El Yaina, the higher area, that wasn't actually holy, wasn't fully holy. The Amiarts would eat there the kachim kalam, which was a mistake. But they wouldn't eat the Meiser Sheni. They wouldn't even eat the Meiser Sheni in the lower area. But the Talmid Chachamim didn't eat anything there because it wasn't consecrated. Why didn't they consecrate it? And Aleph, they say this because he needed all of these items in order to consecrate a new area. We already have our question, because Rav Nachman says, no, you don't. Rav Nachman said you only need one of those items. You don't need all of those items. So you have a question on Rav Nachman. But anyway, it goes on. It says, Lama Kidshua. Why did they consecrate it? The Gemara says, Lama Kidshua. Why did they consecrate it? Amat Lei Kidshua. You said that they didn't consecrate it. Ela Lama Hechnisua. Why did they put the wall around it? It wasn't consecrated. Apparently the wall went to this area as well. It was included. Because it was like a weak area. It was an open area of Yerushalayim, and if they didn't surround it by the wall, it would have been easy to conquer through there. It was a weak point, and could have been conquered. So they put the wall around that area, even though that area wasn't actually consecrated. Whatever the case is, we have a question now. on Rav Nachman. Nachman says that you only need one of them. He says that really, yeah, you can rededicate it even without the Urim V'Tumim. So why didn't they rededicate it? The Brisa says that they didn't dedicate because they didn't have the Urim V'Tumim. Gemara says Tanaihi. It's not a kasha on Rav Nachman because Rav Nachman can find the support from another early source, another Tana. Tanya was started in the Brisa from Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbi Eliezer says, "Is Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanis Shemati, the student of Rabbi Yechim ben Zakkai. Shemati, I heard that they were building the second temple. He was at the end of the second temple. He said, I heard that when they were first building it 420 years earlier, they made curtains for the Heichal and curtains for the Azaras. And while they were building it, it was functioning while they were constructing it. They were still bringing sacrifice while they were doing the construction. So they had to set up curtains to makeshift walls while this was being built, so that it should be able to function. During the construction period. Ones that were for the sanctuary itself, the makeshift walls, these curtains, they built the walls. They put the Klaim were inside. They put the curtains inside, and they built the walls around the curtains. So the builders shouldn't be looking into the sanctuary. Bazaris in the courtyard, they put the curtains on the outside, so the outsiders shouldn't be looking in. So
means on the inside.
They built it on the inside, which means the curtains were on the outside.
Got it.
Okay. I'm Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua's Shemati. Rabbi Yeshua says, I heard Shemakriv enough Bishem Bias that they were able to bring the sacrifices even though there was no house there. They didn't need kalaim, they didn't need curtains. And they even ate kachikalam, even though there were no curtains. The curtains would mark off where was the end of the Beis Hamikdash, because kachim needs to be eaten in the courtyard. They said, oh, it's not a problem. They just keep it in that area. It doesn't need to be with curtains. Kachim kalam and they can eat the kachim kalam in the ma'aseh even though there's no wall. And they should do shirishayna kitchel shayts and kitchel asalave. Because the original consecration that was done, the time of Beis Hamikdash would be the time of Shlomo, and the Yerushalayim, it means on the time of Yeshua, that was done originally, and we don't need to rededicate. It doesn't need to be redone. Lav mechlalke. So we have the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer that they needed curtains, and Rabbi Yeshua that says they didn't need curtains. Lav mechlal, the Rabbi Eliezer said, it must be that Rabbi Eliezer held that although it was consecrated originally by Yeshua and by and by Shlomo, but that consecration wasn't enough for the second temple. They needed to rededicate it, and they needed to put up curtains to make it holy, to make it into the Beis Hamikdash. There had to be a wall there. Without it, it was considered like it was the holiness had disappeared.
There was no. What about the sefer?
Like we mentioned before, that there was a zecher. So Rabbi Yeshua is saying when it comes to the dedication, probably they had to do a zecher, but when it came to the actual service, it was already holy. It wasn't necessary. So anyway, here it seems that Rabbi Eliezer is saying that it's a support for Rav Nachman that it needs to be fully rededicated. How could you rededicate it? Well, you don't need all of the items there. You don't need the Urim V'Tumim. You only need one of them. Any of them works. Okay. It looks good. Normally, Ravina says to Rav Ashi, it's the end of the Talmudic period. Yeah. Mimai, how do you know that that's what Rabbi Eliezer holds? Dilma to Kuliyama Kedusha Shen Kitchla Kitchla. Maybe everyone holds that once it was consecrated originally, it never needs to be reconsecrated. The holiness is still there. And each one is just saying what he heard. Well, 1 second. So why do we need climb? We're trying to make a makeshift Beis Hamikdash to redo it. If you don't need to redo a Beis Hamikdash because it's already holy, you can just sacrifice on the floor or whatever they had over there, some altar that was just set up. You didn't need the kalim. Why did they have kalim? Why did they have curtains? It says let's use Alma. It's just for privacy. It wasn't right to do it out in the open. We don't really have a support for Rav Nachman that says that it was actually rededicated fully. Maybe everyone knows that the consecration of this area was done back in the days of Shlomo, which would be Rav Huna's opinion. And we're left with a question on Rav Nachman that maybe you can't rededicate unless you have everything. Well, the Gemara says Elahani Tanai. Well, that was a nice attempt to find an earlier source for Rav Nachman, but that didn't work. We'll have another source. Tanya was taught in a brisa. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. This is Rabbi Yosi ben Chalaf, the son. He was in Sipari, like his father. Rabbi Yosi was the one that was exiled. Story. Shem bar Yochai was yesterday at my house. We're saying stories about the Rosh Hashanah. So my Shragi comes with the books that he got. Says, here, look at this. I said another story comes with another book. I said, look at it. Referencing these kids' comic books. They have stories of Tanoim. The kids know it by heart. Okay, so I'm Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi says, Lama mana chacham meselu. Why did they list specifically these cities? There's a bunch of cities that the sages listed that they are cities that had walls around them. And that's relevant for if someone sells a house in a walled city, then it doesn't work like regular Shemitah, like regular Yovel, that you only sell it for 49 years, and that's only by fields. But houses in walled cities, once they're sold, you only have I think 12 months, I think, to buy it back. After the 12 months, it's sold forever. The halachas of the walled cities switches the way things are sold. So we have a list of what cities were the walled cities. So why do we have the list? Because there were many more that they didn't list. Why did they list those? Because when they came back in the second from the exile for the second temple, Matzo Elo, they found these cities with Kitchum, and they consecrated these cities. But the first cities, Batlo Mishabatla Aretz, first cities, whatever holiness was there because the city was a walled city, that dissipated because
the holiness of the city.
Yeah. Because the land was destroyed, they left the land, so everything needed to be rededicated, reconsecrated. Alma, you see that Rabbi Shmuel holds the original consecration was temporary, wasn't consecrated for the future. Who holds that? Rav Nachman. We have a source. Where says Ramini, but 1 second, I have a contradiction. I'm Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi, the same Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. He says, are there only these cities? But it also says Shishim Ir Kol Chavel Argaiv Mamlachas Bashan Kalela Aram Betzuris Chaim Megavaya. All these are fortified walled cities. You have a bunch of other cities. And Ela Lama Manu Chacham Meselu. Why did they count these specific cities? Shekshal Bnei Agayla Matzuela V'Kitcham. Because Bnei Agayla came and they consecrated them. That's why they counted these cities. Kitcham Hashta, they consecrated them now. I mean, like Kedusha. But you said further on that you don't need to consecrate them. Rather, they found these and they counted them, they listed them. They for whatever reason, they found these cities, and these are the ones that they listed. But the truth is that if you have a tradition of any other cities, those would also work. Which means that it was the original consecration would work even now. It wasn't a temporary consecration. Kasha Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi. You have a contradiction in Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yosi himself. If you want, we can answer There's two different opinions of what Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi held. If you want, we can adjust one of the names. Wasn't Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi, it was Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi, also Rabbi Yossi's son, but a different, but his brother, Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya was started in a brayso. Elazar bar Yossi. It says in the pasuk that has a wall, that there's a wall. Now it's written loy, vav aleph, lamed vav aleph, which is a little confusing because which one is it? Loy with the vav means that it has. Loy with the aleph means that it doesn't have. So the way we learn it is that it doesn't have to have now as long as it had before. That's going to be that's the way the Gemara learns that. Rabbi Elazar says even if it doesn't have now but it had before, because the consecration that it had back then is going to be satisfactory. That's why I have all these questions when it comes to Purim in the walled city. Yerushalayim, they celebrate on the 15th because it's a walled city. But these other cities like Tveria and Tzfas and other cities that don't have walls, but we think that maybe they had a wall back then. They have questions about which day is Purim. Yeah, there's a bunch of cities. People in Eretz Yisrael know exactly where the questions are. Okay. Or how it's sold? No, because the Yovel doesn't apply once we were exiled. Yeah, all the Jubilee laws don't apply now. Okay, we're on Tes Zayin on the base. Exactly on the top. Nitma ba'azara v'nelma menatama chulu. If someone became impure in the courtyard of the temple. Before we were talking about if someone was impure and he entered the temple. Now we're saying that if he was in the temple and he became impure, how did he become impure? Well, maybe there was a sheretz that died and touched it, or maybe someone died in the temple and he became contaminated. And what happens then is that everyone would need to leave. You take the body out, you don't delay. But if someone was contaminated in the temple, we said that if he waits there, if he bows down, or if he waits there the amount of time it takes to bow down, then he would have to bring the sacrifice. Or if you take the longer route, you have to exit the shortest route. Find the nearest exit. No, and the nearest exit may be behind you. So,
Like when you're running over.
they do the Kayanim give you that what the stewardesses do on the airplane. Okay. Tuma ba'azara minalan. How do we know that there's such a halacha about someone that becomes contaminated in the azara that he has these halachas? Maybe it's only someone that enters the azara when he's already contaminated. Amar Rabbi Elazar says, this is Rabbi Elazar, not the Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi that we're quoting. This Rabbi Elazar is Rabbi Elazar ben Pedas. He's a friend of Rabbi Yechanan. He's in the Hamayra, not one of the Tanai. Rabbi Elazar says, Kasav echad aimer, one pasuk says, this Mishkan Hashem Timei contaminated the tabernacle of Hashem. Kasav echad aimer, another pasuk says, Kies Mikdash Hashem Timei. He contaminated the temple of Hashem. See the difference? One's a temple, one's a tabernacle. Mishkan versus Mikdash. Why does it have to say both? It's not necessary to tell it to me because we already know that you're not allowed to walk into the temple if you're impure. So Tanei in the Tumah Shabifnim. So we're going to use it to teach me about Tumah if he's already inside the temple. He entered, everything was perfect. And while he was inside, he became contaminated. B'kroi miyasri, you have an extra pasuk, and you're telling me that because you have an extra pasuk here, that's teaching you that this extra halacha, if someone becomes contaminated inside, this extra pasuk is actually necessary. It means that we've already used this to teach me something else, and you can't use it to teach me your new halacha that you came up with. The Tanya was done in a brayso. Rabbi Elazar Reimer. Rabbi Elazar says, the brayso Rabbi Elazar would be Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua, which is one of the students of Rabbi Akiva. Imnema Mishkan Lamanema Mikdash. If it says there, the emphasis is on what's the wording. Is it a temple or a tabernacle? If it says tabernacle, why does it say temple? Imnema Mikdash. If it says temple, Lamanema Mishkan, why does it say tabernacle? Ilu Nemer Mishkan Laim Nemer Mikdash. If it would have said just the tabernacle and didn't say the Mikdash Yisem, I would have said Al Mishkan Yechayev. And you only chayev, you only have to bring the sacrifice. For the tabernacle, Sharei Mashuach B'Shem Mishcha, because that was anointed with the anointing oil, very holy oil. Well, Mikdash Chayev, and you won't be chayev for the if you contaminate the Mikdash, the temple. Mikdash, Mishkan, and if it would say the temple, the Yechayev, but it doesn't say the tabernacle. You say Mal Mikdash Yechayev, you only chayev for the temple, Sharei Kedushas Kedush Zaylam, because that is a holiness that lasts forever. Well, Mishkan Le'Yechayev, and you're not chayev for the Mishkan. Now, Lekach Nemar, Mishkan, Lekach Nemar Mikdash. That's why it says both Mikdash, Mishkan, and Mikdash. Now, where we're holding right now is that we have a problem because we were trying to learn from the two psukim, Mikdash and the contaminated. We said that one's extra, and that extra one is coming to teach me that even if he became contaminated while he was already in the temple, he also has to bring the sacrifice. We said no. That pasuk is necessary to tell me that each one has its own halacha, has the halacha of that you're not allowed to contaminate. I wouldn't have known the other one if it wouldn't have said both. So it's not an extra pasuk. Gemara explains Rebbe Elazar Hachi Kashalei. Rebbe Elazar, this was the question that he had. Michti. Mishkan Ikri Mikdash. Mikdash Ikri Mishkan. We know that each one is called Mikdash, each one is called the temple, each one is called the tabernacle. Why do you have to say once this, once like that?
Yeah, I think
it's going to bring a pasuk. Mishkan Mikdash Lamali, why does it have to switch? The fact that it's switching teaches me that in each one you have the same halacha, that you're not allowed to be contaminated, right? And the fact that it says it twice teaches me, the fact that it's a double, could have said a double. No, it already would have been extra, teach me that even if he comes contaminated inside. The fact that it switches the wording, that teaches me that it applies to both. Bishleim Mikdash, Ikri Mishkan, I know where it says, the Mikdash is called the Mishkan, the Ksiv Asati Mishkani B'Seichachem. I will place my Mishkan, I think it's probably this week's Pasha, amongst you. Ela Mishkan, Ikri Mikdash Minalan. But where do we see that the Mishkan is called a Mikdash? Pasuk says that with a kahas would carry the holies, they would carry the Mikdash. It says Mikdash. They carry the temple. It says, no, that's not the temple. That's talking about just the holies, which means referring to the ark. Rather, it's from this pasuk. It says, Vasali Mikdash v'shachanti b'seicham. You should make for me a temple, and I will dwell amongst them. Uksiv, and it's written, all that I show you the form of the Mishkan, and you know that you see we're talking about the Mishkan and it called it a Mikdash. Okay. The Mishkan was temporary, and nevertheless the word of Mikdash was applied. Right. Right. But because we have a specific word for the temporary and a specific one for the permanent one, could have thought maybe it doesn't apply. So we say, no, actually, we use the words for each one. We use both words. It's interchangeable. Now we said that someone that didn't enter the temple impure, but he was already in the temple, and then he became impure. So we said it depends what he does. If he waits there the amount of time that it takes to bow down, or if he actually bows down, or he takes the longer route out, then he's going to be chayiv. Okay, now, he bowed down while he's in the temple, after he became impure, or he waited the amount of time it takes to bow down. Rava says, this was only taught if he bowed towards facing the west. We would think it's the east, but it's because we're on the other side. But facing the west means that he's facing the Kodesh HaKodashim. Yeah. Aval ishtachva klapi chutz, but if he bows down to the east, facing outward, then that doesn't count. Shah in leishalai, then it would have to be the amount of time it takes to bow down. Means then you would be chayav because you waited, not because of the bowing. The bowing was insignificant. You didn't bow right. If you bow right, then you weren't allowed to bow. You were impure. But if you didn't bow right, then it would be chayav because of the waiting. Because the mastila sefer, there's those that taught the same halacha at the end. It says or he waited the amount of time. This seems
the bowing is also
that even if he bowed, he also has to wait. Yeah, if the bowing needed to be the amount of time it takes to bow, that's only if he bowed the wrong way. But if he bowed facing the proper way, which is to the west, even if he didn't delay, he would still be chayav because the bowing itself was prohibited. This is what it means to stay. He bows towards inward, which means to the west. Or he waited the amount of time it takes to bow. When he bowed towards the east, he's going to be chayav. Give me a case. Tell me a case of bowing, which is a delay. Tell me the case of bowing, which is not a delay. Less beshia zukriya balma. It's just a regular bow. This beshia, the one that has the delay, that's pishat yadayim reglaim. That's when he lays and he stretches his arm out on the floor. I'm sorry, like swimming. Yeah. Instead of like kneeling, this is
prostrate, right?
It's prostrate, yeah. Prostrate means to be fully laying down. Okay. Kamashir Shia. How long does it take? The delay. How long is that? Well, Pligi bar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani v'chad de'imei. It's machlekes between Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani and someone else. Manu, who is that someone else? Rabbi Shimon ben Pasi. Okay, so Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani, Shimon ben Pasi. And there are others that say it's slightly different. Rabbi Shimon ben Pasi v'chad de'imei. It was a machlekes between Rabbi Shimon ben Pasi and someone together with him. Manu, who is that other person? Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani. Okay, that doesn't seem to be much of a difference. And V'amila Reb Shimon bar Nachmani v'chad k'meimre. V'amila Reb Shimon. Second. Amila Reb Shimon bar Nachmani. It's either Reb Shimon ben Pasi and someone together with him. And who is that other person? Reb Yitzchak bar Nachmani. And some say it's Reb Shimon bar Nachmani. Sounds like his brother. Chad amar k'meimre dehai psuka. One says that the bowing down has to take the amount of time it takes to say the following verse. Other one says, only from the word vayichru to the end of the pasuk. Now, what is the full pasuk? It says, "V'chol b'nei Yisrael." It's a pasuk in Chronicles. "V'chol b'nei Yisrael royim beredas eish." That all of Israel saw when the fire came down. Kvod Hashem al habayis, and the glory of Hashem is on the house. V'yichru apayim artz, and they bowed with their faces to the floor. Al ritzpa, on the ground. V'yishtachu, and they bowed. V'hoides l'Hashem, and they thanked Hashem. They thank to Hashem Kitayv. That is good. For his kindness is everlasting. Okay. So the machlek is how if you have to say that if it's the amount of time of the whole pasuk or just part of that pasuk. Taner Rabbanan, Taner Brisa Kida alapayim. The word kida, which is what means bowing down, that means on the face. It says in the pasuk, but tikred basheva apayim arza. That Basheva bowed down on her face to the ground. Basheva, this is when she was asking for Shlomo to be the king, because that other fellow, not Avshalom, Adoniah was claiming that he's going to be the new king. So she came in and she bows down to David. So she says, she bowed down fully. Kriya, what does Kriya mean? Ala Berkayim, that's just on the knees. It says by Shlomo Melech, he got up after he bowed down when he said the prayer, when he dedicated the temple. It says that he got up from bowing down. What was that type of bow? That was Kriya, that's only from this Ishtachava. The other type of bow went to this full, to prostrate. Zu pishit yadayim v'raglayim. This is spreading out their hands and feet.
So-
Are we going to come and bow down to you? This is Yaakov telling Yosef.
So what's
By the
this
dream.
one when you just give isn't that Kida?
No, Kida was a complicated.
Same. So what would that be called?
I don't know what that's
When you
called. I don't know.
when you do
Eleno, Maidim.
Isn't that a Kida?
It's not one of the real ones.
There's different, I had a rabbi friend research this. I told you.
No.
The Ramah, during the first one, the first Modim that we do by ourselves, we just did that. Then the Ramah for the repetition, we bowed during the whole
Oh,
Modim.
Oh.
The Arizal, we should just do this on both of them.
now here,
I guess it was kind of a Chabad. Also the Alter Rebbe just did fast on both of them.
now here, what we're discussing is not the amount of time that we were discussing the amount of time
Earlier, but now
Now we're discussing
physical.
what is that bowing down? Is it bowing the back, or bowing, getting on your knees, or is it laying flat? That's what we're
He said it
discussing.
was just
Yeah, so that Moshe's
a
asking.
minor one. Like
He's
that.
asking, but
I don't know if you call it minor.
that
The
type of
language
bowing
used.
wasn't brought over here. Remember, Levi said that he limped. Levi, the student of Rabbi Shua ben Levi, the student of Rabbi, he limped because he tried to show to demonstrate what Kida was, and he did something. He hurt his back. Remember that, Kamara? It says, "Well, no, he hurt his back because he said something that he wasn't supposed to say, and that's why he limped." It says, "Yeah." The Gemara says, because he said that, then when he was demonstrating this, that's why he hurt his back.
Bend over all the way.
Kind of house.
Bend.
Yeah. Okay, Boy Rava, we have a bunch of questions on this page coming up. Tzarech Shia L'Malkus ain't Tzarech Shia L'Malkus. We mentioned that you have to delay in order for there to be a carbon. You have to wait inside the temple after it became impure. He has to wait there for him to be chayav carbon. But let's say they warned him. They told him. They said, "You're tamei. You got to get out of here right away. Not you're going to get malchus." And he delays, but not the amount of time it takes to say that whole verse. So, because he was warned, do we say that he needed to wait the full Shia? Or do we say no? Or do we say he was warned, he's chayav just because he delayed even for a second? The carbon, when it came to a sacrifice, Gemiri Shia, we learned that he has to delay in the carry. Right?
Oh, yeah.
Carry.
Knows about that.
Huh?
That's an
Hudson
English.
knows all about that. Carrying.
Again, it's tardy. Came late. That's tardy. It's tarry. It's to wait on. And then there's tilly tally.
Oh.
Isn't that a word? Like tilly tally means like you like wander around like doing nothing.
Teddy?
You have to be British. to use
That's
that
an
word.
expression, right?
There is an expression.
Tilly.
We think on this like dilly dally.
Oh, it's dilly dally. Okay.
You have to be British to use that word.
Tilly Tally.
If you're American, you're not allowed.
Okay.
Like we first.
So Gemiri Shia for a carbon, we know that there's the delay, but the Malkus like Gemiri Shia, but for Malkus you don't have that. Oidilma, in other words, you'd be chayav even for less. Oidilma, or perhaps Bifnim Gemiri Shia. Anytime he becomes tamei inside the Azara, then he'd only be chayav if he delays that amount of time. Leishna lekarbon leishna Malkus, it doesn't matter which punishment he's getting. Dilly dally. Okay, dilly dally.
Yeah, you're racist.
Okay. Teiko, we have a question. We leave this standing as a question. Teiko means should remain standing, and always the tradition of this is Tishbi Yadar, it's Kushis for bias. Eliyahu Nabi will answer. By Rava. Rav has a question, another question. Let's say instead of standing on the floor in the Azara, he's hanging somewhere in the Azara. He's hanging.
Not by then.
He's in the air. Now that could be because he's standing on a pole or something. Or it could mean that it's just holding on to a string to the clothesline or something. So what's going to be then? When did we learn that if he delays in the Azara, that's Shia de Basar Shtachava? That's a type of delaying where you can also bow down. Like Miri, but if he's not able to bow down because he's not on the floor, so then maybe it doesn't count. He said the amount of time that he's there is the amount of time to bow down, because maybe we're thinking that when you're able to bow down, you don't actually have to bow down. It's good enough to be the amount of time to bow down. But here he can't bow down. Idilma, or perhaps Bifnim Shia Gemiri, it's just the delay, the dilly-dally. It doesn't matter if he actually bowed down or he didn't bow down. If he bowed down. If he's able, it doesn't matter if he's able to bow down or he's not able to bow down. The fact is he delayed that amount of time. Take it. We leave this as a question as well.
What's utility? He came here to the korban.
Yeah, and he became tummy.
That's
And they said
So how long is he there?
the announcement, if you're tummy, get out. I'm sorry.
Why was it? What was the time? Because a lot of time they use different references at the time. Like it's not about like actually saying showing that. But it's about the second, 2 seconds.
Tell me again. We're talking about bowing down.
They're discussing whether it's the action or the time that it takes to the action.
Yeah, so both of those are prohibited. Whether he bows or he takes the time that it takes to bow, both of those are prohibited. He's going to have to bring the car. Now we were discussing, let's say he's not able to bow down. So but he waits the amount of time that he could have bowed down. Is the amount of time that that it takes to bow down because you're able to bow down, or is even if you're not able to bow down, that's still amount of time is good?
By the first, if we go by the time, he's liable no matter what.
He's liable.
Whether he bows or not,
Right.
he's waiting the time.
Right. The other possibility is that why is that time significant? Because there was potential for him to bow down. And we learned in other places that the potential is as if it's fulfilled. But here he doesn't even have potential, so that time is meaningless. Right? Oy Rav Ashi. Well, now Rav Ashi has another question. You see, this is interesting. If someone is tummy and he enters the temple, it doesn't matter how long he waits. If you're tummy and you enter, that's a prohibition. It brings us out. Here we're talking about where he was pure when he entered. He came tummy inside. Now he gets out right away. Then he doesn't have to bring a carbon. But if he waits, then he has to. Now, let's say he came tummy inside. Boy Rav Ashi. Timi Atzmei b'mezid mao. But he actually makes himself tummy. When did we say you needed to wait the amount of time? That's when that's when you didn't want to become tummy, but you became tummy by accident. So then we say, oh, well, you did everything you could to get out, so you're going to be exempt. But if you delay, you dilly-dally in the temple, if you're tummy, then you're going to be chayav. But b'mezid, maybe you don't need to dilly-dally, even if you're there just for a second. Like Mirshi, you don't have to wait. You're automatically chayav because you became tummy when you weren't supposed to. By Dilma, or perhaps bifnim maybe it doesn't matter how he became tummy, whether it's on purpose or not. The main thing is he got out of there right away. We leave that as a question as well. Boy, Rav Ashi has another question. Nazir bekever. A nazir, someone that takes a vow that he's not going to drink wine and cut his hair, he's also not allowed to go into a cemetery. He's a nazir. I'm sorry?
Going to a what?
Cemetery.
Oh, right.
So let's say he is in a cemetery.
Not allowed to.
If it's a family member, doesn't matter.
How did he get in there? He got in a box, and then the box fell apart. They used to have going to the aisle. have these green cases for the kayanim.
Mm.
You would step inside this thing, like sort of like a green refrigerator box. And it had handles here, and you would walk, and that way you were surrounded by like a little room on the way to the oil. And then they made the fences to separate you from the graves as you're walking to the oil. There's a path.
They're walking on the floor.
Walking on the floor, but you're coming within 4 cubits of the graves. So unless there's a wall between you and the graves, then it would be contamination. So they used to have these boxes. They would sit there by the oil, and then you would take them, and then they put up a fence. So years ago, when you were able to drive, they used the car. The Kainim would always go by car. Car would drive straight up. That was before Gimel Tammuz. Going to visit Friedrich Rebbe, go by car.
And then they stayed.
No, to go actually into the Tzaddik's kever, they would go even a Kohen would go, but all the other Kfarim in there, they wouldn't go. Yeah, that would be
Even if there was no wall.
I think it's based on the Taisvus. It says Rabbeinu Chaim Kayan said that if I would have been by the Rabbeinu Tam passed away, I would have contaminated myself. I would have gone to his funeral. I think they learned from that Taisvus that a tzaddik doesn't give off impurity. Anyway, no, this is not a halachic share, but anyway. So here we have a nazir that's in a cemetery, and he got in with the box, and then the box fell apart. So now all of a sudden he's here and he's in the cemetery. He's going to run out. But boy, Shiel Malkus Sarah. Does he have to? If he's going to get Malkus, is it because he's delaying, or even if he doesn't delay, does the same halacha apply? Ifnim, when it came to the Azara Gemir Shir, we know that they have to delay. Bachutz, like Gemir Shir, but outside in other places, a nazir in a cemetery, maybe there's no such thing as delaying, waiting that amount of time. It became tummy. Dilma, or perhaps Bainas Gemir Shir, we learned that someone became contaminated. That's interesting. By accident, after he's already in that situation, then he's only going to be chayav if he dilly-dallies, if he waits that amount of time. Doesn't matter if it's in the Beis Hamikdash or if it's in a nazir in a cemetery. Okay. If he takes the long route, he takes the long way to exit, and he's going to be chayav. But if he takes the shortest way out, then he's going to be pater. Talking about the kayan that became tummy in the sanctuary, in the courtyard. Amar Rava says, Amru, when it says if you take the short route, then you're going to be exempt. Afilu Eke Bitzad Gudel, even if he walks with his heel in front of his toe. It means he takes little tiny steps, baby steps, as long as he never stops and delays, even if it takes him all day. How does it say it? Afilu Kalayam Kula, even if it takes him all day, because he took the shorter route. So then he's going to be exempt. Because he took the shorter route and he didn't stop. He didn't delay.
Because what they're carrying on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Don't stop. Keep on going.
Right. He walked very slowly. Boy, Rava has a question about this. If he does delay little delays as he's walking slowly, do they all add up to the amount of time that he's not allowed to be there? Why don't we answer the question from Rava himself? Rava said, even if it takes the whole day. Why? Right. Rava is asking a question, but he already knows the answer. My answer is Hassam over there. Rava was not saying that. With the Laisha over there, he was saying where he never actually stopped. He was just walking very slowly. Yeah. Remember that the telethon, in California, they have the telethon. So they would have singers and comedians that he brought up. one of the comedians said, so there's a guy that's driving, so gets pulled over by the police. The police says, he says, what did I do? He says, you didn't stop at the stop sign. So he says, no, I stopped. He says, no, you didn't stop. I was watching. He says, well, I slowed down, stopped, same thing. He says, okay, get out of the car. So he gets out of the car, and the police takes his baton, starts to hit him on the head. He says, do you want me to slow down or stop? Okay.
Guess it doesn't find that very funny.
Anyway,
Signs feverishly looking.
No, I was looking, I have, that one.
Picture
wall
of
in
the
my house.
dancing, of the hustle
No.
dancing.
The one wall in my house, I have that telephone, the
Oh, the
entire
telephone, yeah.
billboard.
anyway,
Oh, well.
so here,
Hey, how many people have the billboard? More.
Boy minei Abaya miraba. You hear? There, Abaya asks Rabba the following question. Boloi barucha shir k'tzar mahu. Let's say he took the long route, but he went so fast that it was the amount of time it takes the shorter route. Is he off the hook? Shir gemiri, is it the amount of time that if there's a short route, that's the amount of time that you have? Or it doesn't have to do with the amount of time. It has to do. We told you what to do. You didn't follow the instructions. You're supposed to take the fastest route.
Maybe he does the shorter route at the same speed, he would have been out of there quicker.
Yeah. Amalei. So Rabbi responds, you can't allow the longer route. The longer route is not going to be permissible just because he ran faster. Okay. Maskefler of Zera. Zera has a question. We've established that if someone does the Avaida, if a Kayan does the Avaida when he's Tameh, it says that his punishment is Misa B'dei Shemayim, not Karis. The person that contaminates in the temple, that he's contaminated in the temple and he waits the amount of time, the punishment is Karis, which is more severe than Misa B'dei Shemayim, than death penalty by heaven. Here it says that if a Kayan does the service and he when he's Tameh, it's Misa B'dei Shemayim. It says, how is it possible that he doesn't get Karis? It must be that he became Tameh in the Azara, okay? And because otherwise, if he enters the Azara when he's Tameh, he's Karis immediately. The Gemara says, if he came in Tameh in the Azara, if he didn't delay, then Hechi Aved Avaida. How did he do any service? There's no service that's less than the amount of time it takes to bow down. What type of service did he do? Either Shah, and if he did delay, Bar Karasu, then it automatically gets Karas. Maybe we could say that if you calculate the amount of time that he has to get out of there and the amount of time to delay, so together that amount of time would allow him to do a service and then speed out of there and run. Notice that his running would give him would make up time, would give him time credit to be able to do the service. So how was he able to do a service and also not delay? Because he had the amount of time it takes to get out plus the delay, and then he ran out. So that's why he didn't delay, but he was still able to do a service. If we say that is the amount of time it takes to walk out of the shortest route, but he ran out of the shortest route. He ran out of the shortest route, and with his extra time that he made up, he did a service. But if we say that it's specifically the shortest route and it doesn't have to do with how much time it takes, even if he runs out of there, it doesn't gain him any time, How is it possible that he did a service where he's only going to be chayiv misa, and he didn't delay that he should be chayiv kares? Amar Abaya says, my kosher. What's the problem? We're talking about where he went on the shortest route, but as he's walking out, he flipped over something on the altar to burn better. You know, you flipped over the burgers. It's not the burgers. Yeah, the things that were burning on the altar. And like Rav Huna's taught, that if a non-kayan would do something like that, he'd be chayiv misa. Right? So this applies to someone that's tummy as well, right? Gufa. We go back to analyze something that was stated before by an Amaira, which is Rav Huna. Amar Rav Huna. Huna taught that zar shabach b'tzinura chayiv misa. If it's zar, a stranger that turns over something on the altar, which is one of the services, is to burn the fats of the animal on the altar. If non-kayan does his chayiv misa, echidami, what's the case? If he doesn't turn it over, it would never have gotten burned. Pshita, of course, he's going to be chayiv. I don't need Rav Huna to teach me that. He's doing one of the services, and he's not a kayan. And if it would have gotten burnt anyway, so what was he doing? He didn't do any service. Like Tzricha, the Gemara explains, it's only necessary. If he doesn't turn it over, it would take 2 hours. And now it's going to take only 1 hour. It's coming to teach us to call krevi aveidahu. Anytime that you quicken up the cooking of the is also considered a service. Amar Abaishya says, I would like to say something. However, but I'm afraid what my friends are going to say. Okay, go ahead and say it. Someone enters into a house of tzaras, but he walks in backwards. He walks in backwards. B'shinoi, right? I feel kulai chutz me chaytmai, even if he's entirely in the house except for his nose, which is outside the house because he's walking backwards, right? So his nose still hasn't entered yet the house. Okay, no Jewish jokes. The ksiv, he's going to be tar. He hasn't fully entered into the house. His nose is still out. The ksiv, avabal abayas, because it says someone that enters the house, derech biyasir Torah. Only if he enters in a regular manner. He didn't enter in the regular manner. Mustafina mechavrai, but I'm afraid of my friends because my friends are going to say, Yachi kula nami. Then even if he entered entirely, he should be chayav. Why are you saying that his nose was out? That's when he's pater. I'm sorry. Even if he entered entirely, he should be pater. Why are you saying only if his nose out is pater? Amar Rava. Kulai, Rava explained that it's not a problem. Because kulai, if he would enter entirely, like garamikelim shababayas, like sivaliyat mikol shababayas, if he's entirely in, then it doesn't matter how he got in, because anything that's in the house becomes tummy. It's only the question is when he's entering the house. Then when he's entering the house, but he's not fully in the house, then it has to be in the way of the proper manner. Well, let's say he enters the house and his foot is still outside. What would be the halach? He entered normally, but his foot is still outside. Probably once the majority is in, he'd be coming.
How did he enter?
No,
regular.
That's because he didn't enter
Saying
properly.
regular, but he left his leg out.
Then he
He
walked
didn't.
in with 2 legs.
He left one. He put 1 foot in, 1 foot out.
Oh, so he never really
You're halfway
entered.
on the plane.
Take off my.
Tani Namiyachi was taught in a brisa. Gagin halalu, these roofs of the Azara, ein eichlam sham kachi kachim. You can't eat on the roof, kachi kachim. Ve'ein sheichtim sham kachim kalim. And you can't shecht over there the kachim kalim. Sure, you're allowed to be shechted anywhere in the Azara. This is according to the opinion that holds the roofs are not consecrated. It's only the floor and the airspace. And the main point, and a tame that enters through the roof into the heichal. Oh, he's going to be exempt. Only if he comes in the proper manner. I got to see the notes, what that you have. Let's take a look over here.
Didn't we learn that the guys? who
Let's see number 8.
walls,
Those little, yeah, remember, yeah, I
little
remember that.
boxes, is that what you did?
That's interesting.
Let's see 9 and 10. If a person notices a stain resembling teras on the walls of his house, he must call a kohen. Okay. If a person enters the house backwards and he enters it in his entirety, he is tamei by mere virtue of being inside the house, even though he did not enter in a normal manner. However, to become tamei in this fashion, his entire body must be inside the house. Only the majority of his body is in the house is excluded from tumah. For the verse cited by Rabbi Shia, turn it like this, right? It comes into the house, implies there's a difference between coming in forwards and entering backwards. Since the distinction cannot be applied to one whose entire body entered backwards, who is tummy no less than utensils, must apply this to one whose majority body entered backwards. Yeah, so apparently if his entire body enters backwards, if his majority of his body enters backwards, it's going to be pure. Yeah. It's only if he's entirely.
Even if you got fully in.
Yeah. No, once you're fully in, then your tummy, just like a vessel, would be tummy. It's only if you're not fully in, just the majority in, that it's going to make a difference.
Straight.
If you walk straight, then majority would make a person tummy. Okay, let's leave it over here.
Oh, we're just getting started.
We didn't stop.
Zuhi mitzvahs aseh shebemikdash.
Justin, how are we gonna deal with whole day?